أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور. سل إماما عاش في العلم دهورا ودهور، يطلب العلم ببذل حتى ضمته البحور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. صابرا في العلم صبرا حتى سموه الصبور، يخرج العلم بفأل مثل ريحان الزهور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. كن إذا سموك اسما لتكن مثل الحضور، كن رفيقا كن عظيما كن كما تلك الصقور. راقيا بالعلم نحو النجم مزدان شكور، رافضا كل التدني رافضا نفس الغرور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. ابن مسعود فقيه علم أحيا القفور، فإذا أعطاك رأيا كان سهما في النحور. وعلي ثم بالدين معاذ لا يبور، اقرأوا التاريخ تروي عنه أفواه سطور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. إن سألت عن إمام أو فقيه في الأمور، ابن عباس ترنم وسيبقى في الصدور. فهو كالشمعة تذهب حتى تأتينا بنور، ساهر بالليل علم وبأوقات سحور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. اطلب العلم أخي فهو درب به نور، به ترقى به تحيا عالما حرا فخور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي والعصور. إذ بكى النبي يوما سمعا صوتا جهور، يا أبي كم روت عنك الليالي.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It kind of feels strange being back in the US here. I was in Somalia a few weeks ago, and then we did a live also from Syria, Idlib, and then to be back here, it's a strange feeling coming back from the Muslim world, especially from the lands of struggle and people trying so hard to bring change. So welcome to Islamic Oasis live. We have an amazing discussion today on cryptocurrency. Many of you are well aware the names that will be on this show. We have Jamal Harwood, someone who has written, lectured, given conferences on economy. He's a chartered accountant in London, UK. Has spent much of his business career in management and consulting for a variety of firms. Currently he gives lectures on business and finance and is the host of Economy Dissected And you can see his work on many of, for instance, on when it comes to khilafa.com and other major websites that are talking about Islamic economy and economy in general. And then we will also have momentarily Dr. Abu Talha al-Malkawi, Muhammad Malkawi. He's not on, but he will be coming on soon. Professor in Department of Software Engineering at Jordan University of Science and Technology, also the author of Fall of Capitalism and Rise of Islam. Inshallah, he will be joining us very soon, bi'iznillahi ta'ala. So let's go directly to the show and welcome our brother Jamal Harwood. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba ya Sheikh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Assalamu wa rahmatullah. Sheikh, for some reason this topic has been shared a lot, and a lot of people are very much interested in this cryptocurrency. I guess a lot of people just want to make money and they're trying to figure out how to do it. So the question, I guess before I even to discuss cryptocurrency itself, if you can do me a favor and just describe what is money, what is money, and the definition of money or definition of mal, so that people have at least an understanding of what we look at when we are talking about currency in general.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Money is commonly known as a medium of exchange. So it's a way to actually facilitate trade. So you used to have like a bartering system. So maybe you could have you would exchange a sheep for several chickens, something like that, or you could use your services. You could be a carpenter and you do carpentry work for somebody, and somebody is a doctor. So you both share your time, your services between each other. But that's not very efficient. It's quite difficult because, maybe, you're selling your sheep, but you don't want chickens, and there's a market for chickens, but you would like to buy something else. You'd like to buy wheat, but the wheat person in the market doesn't want to buy your sheep. So if you have money, you have something which you can exchange. So the person who's exchanging his sheep, he can get money. And the person who is selling his wheat or his chickens can get money. And then with that money, they can go and buy whatever they want. Or maybe they don't buy this week and they buy next week, or they use it for something else. So money provides greater flexibility in society because it becomes a measure for the way that you deal with transactions. So you in terms of your services, like if you're like getting a salary for your work, or whether you're selling something. And of course, in Islamic history, we've seen over centuries and centuries continuation of money, and alhamdulillah, we had gold and silver as money. So this was the basis in Islamic society. We can talk a bit more about that later. But in effect, money is critical to have a society functioning well, because it makes trade much easier.
So so I guess just to fulfill the condition of what a currency is, it allows for a transaction to take place. It has value. It has some type of fungible, value. It has to have. So those are, as long as those conditions. So what does it have to be backed by governments? Does it have to be backed by, what is it being backed by? I understand the gold and silver is being backed just from the intrinsic value of gold and silver, or is it backed?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at money, again, before we talk about the Islamic position, but if we just talk about it from throughout history, we're talking about thousands of years, not hundreds of years, but thousands of years, more than 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 of years. there were certain characteristics which would make something suitable to be money. You've mentioned a couple. One is intrinsic value. It would have value in itself. That value should be relatively stable. You don't want something that is deteriorating rapidly. So food has value, but it deteriorates. It goes bad very quickly, so it's not good for that. It needs to be fungible. It needs to be divisible. Diamonds are very good, but you can't have tiny, tiny diamonds which you can go into a shop and buy some basic food. You could exchange diamonds for large amounts of services or large amounts of goods, maybe buy a car or a house, but it's not very tiny. This is where silver is very good, because small amounts of silver can be used for small transactions. So this fungibility is important. You mentioned about the government backing. This is important, yes, because the government will have a role in any society to ensure that any money which is used is valid. Because what's to stop me going out and printing the Jamal note? So if I go and get some fancy computer software and I start printing notes, put my picture on the front of it, put numbers on it, 1, 5, 10, 20, 50. I could do it. I could do these fancy notes. I could paint them a green color, But if I take that down to a shop and say, this is the Jamal note, I want to buy some food, I've got some groceries to get hold of, they're going to say, sorry, this is very pretty, but it doesn't cut it. And the other thing is that the government will use a currency, will use money in terms of its own transactions. It's going to pay salaries to government workers. It's going to tax people. So where you are, they're going to be taxing you in the US dollar. They're not going to be taxing you in cryptocurrencies. We'll talk about cryptocurrencies shortly, but they'll be taxing you in US dollars, because that's the official currency of the US. So there's official status of it. And again, you have to use the dollar in all official matters. Now, you could go to the marketplace and do a barter arrangement. You could tell your plumber, to say that your plumber, that, listen, I'll do your tax return for you if you fix my broken pipe. And the plumber might say, okay, fair enough, I'll do that, and you do my tax return. So that's a form of barter, which is acceptable. But in terms of money, the official money of the United States is the US dollar. So, they will not accept any other form of money. Obviously, if you're going on holiday, you can exchange your dollars for British pounds or euros or something else. But the official currency of the country is obviously the US dollar.
Sheikh, you mentioned something. You said, okay, well, it has to have some type of value. But let me ask you this. For instance, when you look at currencies in general, I was just in Somalia a few days ago, and Somalia, $1 is now 26,000 shekel or something like this. And so people are finding it very difficult to even have $10 in their pocket, because you're going to have a truck that is carrying that money to one place to another place. So they have created all types of you can say almost apps, digital apps, for instance, to pay for their services, because there is no way to be able to carry that kind of cash around. I mean, so when you're talking about the value of money, that currency already has no value. Neither does the Syrian lira, for instance. So, I mean, what are we saying?
What's happened? What's happened? You raise a very good point, which is that if we look in the last 100 years, not a long period of time, the US dollar was backed by gold. and it was backed by gold officially since 1944, which was the Bretton Woods Agreement. So the world, coming out of World War II, got together, the major powers, and they agreed that the dollar would be the de facto standard, and the dollar would be exchangeable for gold at the rate of 35 US dollars equals 1 ounce of gold. So all the other currencies were marked against the dollar, so they were also de facto backed by gold. So if you would have $2 equals 1 British pound, that meant that one British pound would be like 70, would be 1 ounce of 1 ounce of gold would be like 17 and a half.
Okay.
I've got to get my mathematics right here.
No,
17 and a
okay,
half
I understand. So it will
pounds. You understand? So that was the situation right up until 1971, which is only 50 years ago, 51 years ago, when Richard Nixon, he took the America off the gold standard. So he unilaterally decided to cut the gold standard, the Bretton Woods Agreement. So at that point, all currencies in the world became free-floating fiat money, which meant that the governments would back them and say that this is the official currency for each country, but there was nothing backing them up in terms of gold. So you couldn't go down to the the bank and say, right, here's my US dollars, and I want you to give me, officially give me gold for it. Or internationally, what had been happening up until 1971 was a lot of countries were calling the US out because the US was printing much more dollars than they had in reserve. So at the time of World War II, there was 21,000 tons of gold was being held by the Americans. So because they had the largest holdings of gold, this meant that they were the leading nation in terms of currency. So people were happy to accept the US dollar, particularly when the government said that we'd back it with gold. But throughout the 50s and 60s, the Americans were printing too much money, too many dollars, and flooding the world with it. And when countries decided to redeem that currency, they would be taking gold for it. So the American gold reserves went from 21,000 tons down to 8,000 tons, which was dramatic. So this is the reason why the Nixon administration decided to cut the gold standard. So effectively, Bretton Woods was canceled. The dollar continued to be the main currency around the world because the US was the main superpower, and hundreds of military bases around the world, and the infrastructure that banks use, that clearing, the SWIFT system, all of these things, the major bond markets, all denominated in US dollars. So the world just continued to use US dollars. But if you look at the price of gold in dollars since 1971, it was $35 an ounce. That was the official exchange rate. And today it's $1,750 equals 1 ounce. So the reason is that there's been high level of inflation, meaning that the value of the dollar has dropped. So in the same way, when you go to Somalia and you see that it is thousands and thousands of currency required to buy an ounce or even to buy dollars, you can see that what happens is that the governments print too much money, they don't have anything of substance backing it up, and this is basically a recipe for high inflation. So the people suffer because the money, one of the key requirements of money is stability, and that stability is lost because governments print too much of it.
So
So again, getting,
okay,
yeah.
so now, I guess, would it be for Somalia, let's say? I mean, we may have to go to part 2 of this discussion too, but I guess I'm asking from international currencies perspective, would it be more feasible for a country like Somalia to look into cryptocurrency, or would it be a disaster? I'm not discussing here at this point the halal and the haram of it. I'm just discussing why are countries looking for another form of currency, and why is cryptocurrency at least something that people are thinking that there needs to be another form of currency other than a dollar.
Okay. So let's start by just saying, what is a cryptocurrency? So if you look it up, it's a peer-to-peer electronic cash. Okay, so it's electronic, so it's on the internet. That's one thing. Now, the main one is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is limited in terms of the number of Bitcoins that there are, or they promise to say that there's only going to be X number. I think it's a couple of million, or 2 or 20 million Bitcoins, and then they promise not to go more than that. So you've got a limited amount, all right? In the same way that if you looked at gold, for example, there's about 180,000 ounces of 180,000 tons of gold in the world. Okay, and that goes up every year by 1.5%, something like that. The amount of new gold that is mined every year. So that's going up a small amount, and it has its intrinsic value. So Bitcoins, with an X number of Bitcoins, there's a limited amount. So that stops anyone going out there and just printing Bitcoins like crazy. Now, that's not the same thing with other cryptocurrencies. Some of them, that they are producing more and more. So you lose this idea of having a limited amount. But the thing is that the cryptocurrencies provide a utility which is called the blockchain. And the blockchain is a record of all the transactions which are used. So when somebody buys a Bitcoin, that's a transaction. When somebody uses part of a Bitcoin to buy something, that's a transaction. When somebody sells something to somebody else and they exchange Bitcoins, that's a transaction. So all of those transactions are being held on the Bitcoin. It's like a ledger. It's like an accounting ledger. So there's some utility in that. Now, again, if you go from one country to another and you don't want to carry a lot of cash with you, you could, if you've got your Bitcoin wallet, it's on the internet, so you've got some Bitcoins on your wallet. When you go to the other country, you just go to a computer, or you go to somewhere where they're trading in Bitcoins, and you access your wallet and you can spend, and then you can convert that into local currency, you see. So people like this because you can avoid the banks. You can avoid the high charges which banks have. If you go down to your bank and say, I'm going on holiday to Europe, I need to get some euros, they're going to charge you 3, 4, or 5%. For those euros. And then when you come back and you want to exchange your euros back into US dollars, they're going to charge you again. So you're going to lose money with that. And it's inconvenient. Do you want to carry cash? Do you want to use a card? Do you want to, all of this sort of stuff. So this is where cryptocurrencies have come in. And the other thing is that people looked at it because of the idea of anonymity. Maybe you could put your name down there just as a number, and then you can see these transactions. It's not Muhammad doing this or Jamal. It's just a number. So people like this anonymity, although of course it's not really there, because on the system, ultimately they're going to have your name and details. And and governments and others can access all of this because they've done it, and they have confiscated bitcoins from criminals and so on. So that it's not really as anonymous as people think it is.
So
But
here's the thing.
in answer to your question, I would say no, because I know that there's some utility and there's some value in a blockchain, and there's some value in having an electronic currency, but there's a lot of problems with cryptocurrencies as well, and this is why it wouldn't be good for Somalia or El Salvador or others. I mean, I know El Salvador is using Bitcoin,
Brazil, I guess Venezuela was using it, and then obviously
some of them are. I mean, the system, for example, the system is incredibly slow, right? You know, if you're using a Visa card,
is this the issue of adoption? Meaning, the system is slow because they're trying to figure out how to introduce this currency in the market, or is it the banks feel threatened by it, or is it because, you know, I was listening to this guy from JP Morgan. He was saying that, look, we on daily basis we do trillions of dollars of transaction from banks to banks around the world, and they just because they think that cryptocurrencies it's not regulated the way it should be. They are finding this to be a problematic issue when it comes to transactions of such, talking about trillions. So is it the trouble with it is that it's not regulated, it's not centralized?
That is a problem, yeah. Bitcoin was invented by somebody called Satoshi Nakamoto, and nobody knows who he is, right? I mean, he could be the U.S. government for all I know. I mean, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was the U.S. government, because I think the U.S. government's got a lot to gain by having cryptocurrencies. And for example, they had all of this.
Can you give me some examples of what the U.S. government would have from this?
Well, look, if we look at the way money is, look at China as a good example of this. They're going to something called a central bank digital currency. So a central bank digital currency is not cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the non-regulated, independent form of money which is not run by any government and is completely independent of any government. Whereas central bank digital currencies are run by governments, and they are not at the moment on a blockchain, although they are regulated and held and transactions are controlled. So it's a bit like having a bank account, and everyone has got most people have a bank account, and the central bank can control the money going into your bank account and out of your bank account. So this is a new development.
Digital. That's a digital transaction.
That's right. Central bank digital currency.
Yes.
And that is very, very dangerous. Okay, it's very dangerous. It's already here now. I mean, the Chinese are using it in several of their provinces. They trialed it at the Beijing Olympic Games. All visitors coming to China had to use an app on their telephone to get any money, and they had this digital currency, and they would use the app to go into a shop and buy something. Now those forms of money, they can do a very high volume of transactions, whereas Bitcoin, you can do a transaction, but it might take 20 minutes. So you can't go into a shop and buy a loaf of bread and buy it with a Bitcoin. I mean, it's very difficult, and it would take, it's impractical to be waiting all this time for it to come through. And this is without people using it heavily, okay? So the idea has some sense to it because it's limited, it's not like money printing, the value is held, but you can't use it in terms of all of your day-to-day transactions. Now, digital currencies can be, but digital currencies are not backed by gold and silver. They're not backed by anything of value. It's just a replacement for fiat money, and with a lot of strings attached.
But
You
it's
imagine
regulated.
if Uncle...
But it's regulated.
Yeah, it's regulated, but not only that, if they get rid of cash, and I think this is what they ultimately will be doing. So they bring digital currencies in, and everyone says, "Oh, this is wonderful! I've got a card here. You know, my stimulus check is going to be put into my account directly, or my furlough check. You know, my social security, all this, my salary, my wages, all of this, and then I just use a card, like a credit card, to buy anything, whether I'm buying a stick of chewing gum or a newspaper, or I'm buying a car or a house. I'm going to use my card, and it goes back to my digital currency." Now, the danger with this is that the government knows everything that you do. And the government could actually stop everything you do. You know, if you're about to take out a subscription to Khilafah magazine, and you know you're going to go there and put it on your central bank digital currency, and the government doesn't like Khilafah magazine, they can stop that transaction. And they say, "Sorry, Muhammad, you can't do that. You're just going to get one of those nice messages that says, you know, sorry, this transaction is not authorized." And you say, "What the heck was it? Why is it not authorized?" Or what happens when you're not authorized? You know, and it's you know, people say, "Well, that can never happen."
Brother Jamal, that happens now. I mean, we are a non-profit.
Yes, it happens now. Of course, it can happen now. Yeah.
So,
And what if the government come and they say, "Actually, I'm going to take the taxes from your account," right? So people say, "Okay, that's fair enough. I mean, I write them a check at the moment, or I send them money on a card." But they could decide how much taxes they're going to take, and they're just going to take it. And then you have to go and challenge them and to try and get your money back. You know, it's not going to be easy. You know, that's another thing that they can do. That they can stop you from spending on certain things, and they can, you know, but they can't do that if you're using cash. If you're using dollars or you're using gold or silver,
so,
you know,
let me ask you this though: does that let's say digital currency, for instance, would that help maintain inflation rates or recession? Is that what they're thinking? Is that, look, we can control the we don't have to print as much cash, or it won't have any effects either way?
I think they'll put all sorts of excuses out there to bring it in play. They'll talk about convenience. They'll talk about saving the cost of printing money, you know, printing notes.
Because that's what they're saying. They're saying it costs now 95 something cents, right? I mean 5 cents, I guess, to print the dollar. So it's costing them, you know, they're getting 95 cents. You know, they're making money.
They'll put all sorts of crazy excuses. But the bottom line is they're going to control you and me and everyone else out there. This is really what they're doing. Because you control somebody's money, they know exactly what you're doing, where you're going, what shops you're in, which magazines you buy, which countries you visit. You know, if they don't want you to visit Somalia because, you know, Joe Biden or Donald Trump says it's a terrorist country, and Trump said this. He said, you know, he could stop you from visiting. He says, sorry, you know, transaction not authorized, you know, and you're going to have a heck of a time trying to get it authorized, aren't you? You know, so they say, sorry, you can't buy an airline ticket to go visit Somalia. You know, what's this? You know, so you become a controlled person, more controlled than you are at the moment. And this is really what digital currencies are all about. This is going to be a disaster for everyone. Now, in the US, I know it's a little bit more libertarian in some ways, and there's a kind of a you know, a strong protest movement. You know, people want to keep their guns and things, and there's a lot of distrust of government. But when they get these digital currencies in, and when they start taking cash away from people, this is going to be a major issue. And you wait and see what happens. And this is why I think the cryptocurrency is an interesting subject, because I believe that they use cryptocurrency as a way to design these software, to design the mechanisms that they can have for rolling this stuff out. And I think that's where the cryptocurrencies have come in. Because I think they can put a stop to cryptocurrencies any time if they want. They could effectively outlaw Bitcoin if they really wanted to.
That's true. So now let's get to, I guess, the questions that the Muslims, because we kind of defined what currencies are. We defined in many ways the different types of currencies. That you have the metallic, which is the gold and silver. Then you have the fiat, which is cash. Then now you have cryptocurrency, and of course the CBDC, which is, I guess, the central bank digital currency that we're talking about. And then you have this crypto Bitcoin, which is, I guess, decentralized in many ways, not really regulated, but at the same time, obviously, they're regulating it. But so for Muslims, Sheikh, when we talk about, there's a lot of people who want to make money, and they're saying that, I think right now the Bitcoin itself is around $21,000. That's what it is. When we say that, we know that, okay, when something is haram, or we say something is halal, we have to have a very, it has to be qat'i, text, and the dalil and thabit. It has to be very clear text saying that something is haram, to say that something, to make something haram or halal. When it comes to cryptocurrency, what is it exactly that makes it, I guess, haram? I'm trying to figure this out. Is it haram or is it halal? If it's haram, why? If it's halal, why?
Yeah, I believe so. The papers I've read. I'll send you one, which again your followers, your readers, and so on and so forth can have a read of it. It's a paper that a Muslim friend of mine wrote about cryptocurrencies, and the core argument was about this uncertainty and speculation. The idea is that when Islam says that there should not be uncertainty and speculation in these transactions, this is a requirement that we need to follow. So, for example, I gave the example earlier that if you're going to visit Somalia and you had a Bitcoin wallet, so you've got some Bitcoins, in a wallet.
I understand that. Hold on. But see, the thing with Somalia is that there is uncertainty. There is all types of uncertainty. Yeah. The money has no value. I can't work there without having dollar in my pocket, because you're looking at, there is no value to that cash. When it comes to, I guess there is, but it's 26,000. I'm not going to carry thousands.
But there's a difference. The difference.
Would it be easier to carry cryptocurrency in my pocket?
It would be easier, yes, but you still have this question of the speculation and the wild fluctuations. You mentioned 21,000, which is the current price of a Bitcoin. It's been as high as 68,000.
Yes,
the maximum
that's
level
where
was
it began, right? That's
68,000, and it's been down as low as $1. So when it started off, it was like nothing, like $1 or something, or a few dollars. So the point is that it does fluctuate up a lot. But again, the point is that this is not an official currency. So Muslims.
So the moment it's adopted, then it becomes halal. If a government adopts it, let's say I'm in Venezuela, and Venezuela says I'm using cryptocurrency, then it's okay.
Yes, because the point is that if you're in Venezuela and now the currency of Venezuela is Bitcoins, you will be forced to, because effectively the government will be paying you in Bitcoins. All right, so they will be saying, here is your salary. So let's say you work for the government. Here's your salary, and it's being paid in Bitcoins, and the government is effectively saying you must use.
Is it the fluctuations, or is the regulation by the government that makes the halal?
No. They're two different arguments. They're two different arguments.
All right.
The one in terms of the obligation is that Islam allows us to use the US dollar. Okay. Now,
because it's stable,
if there was
and it's backed by government.
Yeah, listen. So when the next Khilafah state comes, somewhere in the Muslim world, they're going to have money, and that money will be based on gold and silver. Okay, and any coinage or any paper is going to be 100% backed by gold and silver. That's the shutter position. Okay. Now, let's say you and me are living in that Khilafah state, okay, and let's say it's in the Middle East somewhere. So we go and we migrate and we live there, and we bring our British pounds with us and our US dollars and whatever else we had, and that money we can use, we can trade, we can do it. But the state, the Khilafah state, cannot do that, meaning it cannot be issuing a fiat money, because the Khilafah state has a shutter obligation to have gold and silver as its money. Okay, so there's many evidences of that, and the main point is that you see the Usuli basis is that you have to have a dalil for the actions which you're doing, and the actions that the Prophet ﷺ and from Medina was that they were using gold and silver. So, and of course the Quran mentions gold and silver in terms of the level of zakat, the level at which the hand of the thief is going to be cut, and many other matters. The blood money and so on is all defined in gold and silver. So the dalil is telling us that the state will have gold and silver. If you have US dollars, you can, buy something with it. So once you're living in the Khilafah state, you're going to use the local money without a doubt. But you can cash in your US dollars. It's not like you've got to go and burn them, or you've got to throw them away.
But
you understand my point? You see my point? Or for example, you're in the Khilafah state and you're going to the US to visit somebody. You're going to visit, somebody in the US, maybe for work purposes or something. Again, you leave the Khilafah state and you convert your gold and silver money into US dollars. And then when you travel and you use the US dollars in the US, and then when you come back, you convert them back into the gold and silver, dinars. So this is what the reality will be in an Islamic society. Now, in a non-Islamic society today, we have the question about, we've got official currencies like the US dollar, like the British pound, like the euro, which you are obliged to use because that's basically what they're collecting tax from you from, and what you have to receive in terms of your salary, and what they will not accept anything else in terms of any contract that you do. This is the other thing. It's the obligation of that currency. Now, you don't have any obligation to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin's not official. Bitcoin is just something's invented. It's a speculation. It's not money. It's not nothing official. It's just some guy, some digits on the computer which he's developed, and he said, use it for this or that or what have you. Now, some other people will take it and buy and sell from you, but that doesn't mean it's an official currency. It's basically,
But see, look, what if when people decide, for instance, if 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, 100 people decide to give it value and say that, look, if we are going to use this currency, it's easy, it's kind of something, it's convenient, and let's say 100, if not 100,000 people decide, then does it become valuable? I mean, because now people are saying unless it's backed by a government, that's what you're saying, because it needs to be regulated, it has to have some type of value.
The government, whilst I don't like the US dollar, particularly how it's used oppressively around the world, it's another topic, and I don't like the British pound, and I don't like the euro, and I don't like the Turkish lira, and the Egyptian pound, and all of these other currencies, which are fiat money, and they're not really backed by anything substantial, and they're all subject to devaluation. They're all subject to the problem of money printing. The fact is that they are the currencies which are used and which are obliged to be used in all of these countries. Okay.
Sheikh, but somebody can say
whether we have
look, but somebody can
in
say
answer to your point,
cryptocurrency.
let me finish the point. In answer to your question, whether there's 5 people or 500 people or 5 million people using Bitcoin, it's still not a currency. It's not, a currency, except for, I think, El Salvador. I think El Salvador is the only country where they have it. And even in El Salvador, it's not the only official currency. All right. So there's there's another currency as well. So it's not the only currency which is being used. But again, if you were in an El Salvador and they paid your salary in Bitcoins, then you have to take them and you cash them in and you do what you do with your money. But that's a big difference from saying now, anywhere in the world, I can go out there and start buying this stuff which somebody says is money, but doesn't meet the standards of money.
Can somebody say, Sheikh, I understand where I believe I understand what you're saying, but it's just I'm trying to say, can someone say that the reason why the cryptocurrency is not being pushed or not, because is it a threat to the currencies that we have today?
Well, because of the scale issue, absolutely not. Okay. Now, the people that are behind Bitcoin, and there's a lot of big fan base out there, there's a lot of analysts and investors and people who are big on Bitcoin and they want to see it everywhere, but they're just selling things. It's like the guy down the road who's selling condominiums. This is what he's selling. He's selling something. So he wants you to buy a condominium. So he wants you to buy a Bitcoin. So he tells you how great it is and all that stuff. But a week later, it's lost 20% of its value because it's fluctuating up and down and all of this type of stuff. But the point of the matter, so it's just what you call a speculation. It's a gambling. It's a form of gambling and speculation. So the thing is, and this is the notion of investment that they're talking about. Now, is it a risk to the US dollar or the Chinese yuan or pound or euro? No, it's not, because you've got the scale issue. I mentioned earlier that you can't use a Bitcoin in terms of going into a shop and buying a newspaper, because if everyone is doing that, if it's an official currency of a country, the system can't handle it. They really can't handle it, and even now, it's using too much energy. Those which are doing Bitcoin mining, which is a ridiculous thing, frankly, is using too much energy. And
I guess the cost now is to mine. It's about 17,000. So, and the cost of the Bitcoin is 21,000.
That's right. All of this use of, people are worried about energy crisis. I don't know what it's like there in the U.S., but everyone's talking about Ukraine and the oil price has gone up and the price of gas and all of this stuff. But it's hitting us in Europe big time. It is a big issue. But the point of the matter is that the use of something like a cryptocurrency is not going to solve that problem, because unless it was really adopted officially by a country with proper limits on the number of the Bitcoins, then it's going to be just like a fiat currency. In fact, there are there's thousands of cryptocurrencies out there, and most of them have no limit on the number of coins that they can print, right? Some of them have different fancy technology behind them. Fair enough, if somebody's design some interesting technology, well then, maybe they'll get some value for that. It's like software. They've done interesting software, like a new form of blockchain. Some people are big fans of Ethereum, and because it's got programming capabilities. But the bottom line is that unless they're adopted officially by a country, it's not going to be the money. All it is an interesting form of, electronic money, which could be used like money in certain circumstances. So, I can see people using it when they travel, because they go from one country to another country and they've got like a Bitcoin wallet. But people can do that now anyway, because you've got a US dollar bank account, and you can go to another country and access that, via a credit card or something like that. So this whole idea about it being
easily
cross border, and there's been a lot of scandals where some of these people who were looking after people's bitcoins have stolen the bitcoins.
The Muslims who are watching this and they are interested in let's say Bitcoin or farming or whatever terminologies that are out there for this, so it is haram.
I believe it's haram.
Okay, that's not. I believe
I'm not a scholar. Okay, I'm not a scholar. Let me say that. But from what I've read of the arguments on this matter, that's what my position is.
Okay.
So,
But
the point of the issue, I'm not a scholar, so I'm not going to say to you definitively, this is a fatwa that Jamal Harwood has said, and therefore, but I'm just presenting some of the arguments that have been presented to me.
Okay, so that Allah, now you see that creates a very big problem here, because so now can you see, so you're saying that even from the point of view of just currencies in general and economics, you're an economist, you don't see that this can actually become a common currency in the coming years? You don't think that this could be
No, it's a good question. I think what happens is the Bitcoin space I see as an area where they develop software. They develop the blockchain, they develop the techniques and the way that they use this type of thing. This is what they're doing. But what they are doing in parallel to this is these digital currencies. Okay, so digital currency is completely different from Bitcoin. It's run by the government and the central bank. It can become the official currency. Yeah. It can replace the dollar. It'll still be called a dollar. They'll call it a dollar, but it'll be administered via a bank account which the central bank, the Federal Reserve, administers on behalf of the government, and you're going to be stuck with it. You will not have any way out of it. So you need to understand how this is going to affect you. And frankly, once they've got this in and working, they are going to phase out cash. And they call it a war on cash. And you saw when we had this COVID scare, everyone was saying, don't use money, you're going to catch COVID from money and all this stuff. Don't use cash, you have to use a card. This is all part of the same plan. They don't want you to use cash. So maybe in 5 years, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 2 years, I don't know, maybe they'll be phasing cash out. And
so
they bring all sorts of arguments.
Saying that it's more
drug dealers, crime gangs, black market economy, all this stuff. They'll be using this to argue that they want to get rid of cash. But basically, they're just putting us all into a pot where they will control our lives via controlling the money that we have. And they'll know every penny, every cent that you spend, and they will be able to control what you spend and what you cannot spend. And not only that, they'll tax you whatever they want to tax you. Yeah.
So you see the feasibility that obviously, I mean, I guess we are already seeing that there's a lot of, and everything is becoming digitized, and so this is already happening. So you're saying in what we might be able to, what we'll see is digital currencies becoming common, and this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, American government, Federal Reserve, Jay Powell, he's on record. He says that they're developing it, and he can see a lot of benefits from it. This is what he said. This is his words. So they haven't launched it yet, but it's getting very close. It's going to be launched in many countries.
And the only difference between that cryptocurrency and the digital currency is that one has value and the other one is not scalable.
It's not scalable, and it doesn't have any official value. Meaning it's not the official value of the country, and the country does not recognize it. So you know, the U.S. government may not make it illegal, but some countries have made it illegal at various times, and others, you know, what have you. So it's just like a hobby. Let's just imagine that you play around on computers, and that you want to launch your own money. You could do it. In fact, some people have done that, you know, and people have invested in it. You know.
And then when it comes to the Islamic position here, because of the clear Shara conditions, that what money is supposed to do, what gives value to money, what does that mean, what is a transaction, because of those conditions put on by the Sharia, cryptocurrency cannot be, at least what you're saying is, cannot be halal.
I've used this argument about the government official money because there's no way out of that, meaning that is the money which is there in the society, and Islam allows you to use that, and in fact the government, wherever you're living, will force you to be using that via their tax and salaries and official contracts and everything.
See, but on the other side, you're saying that if a government adopts, on the other side, you're saying if a government does adopt.
So that's one argument, and then there's also ghara and speculation, and this type of thing is not allowed too. So I just put two arguments there.
But let me ask you this. Here's the thing. When it comes to speculation, so for instance, I guess, you know, for instance, if you just look at the Turkish lira versus a dollar now, I mean, Turkish lira, when I was there, just a few days ago, it was, I don't know, it was 17, and then by the time I actually left, it was 18, 20, whatever it is right now, 18 or, almost 19 maybe. If someone speculates and says that, look, I am going to, I'm going to buy, or I'm going to do an exchange here through a sarraf, because you know that now you're going to get more of the Turkish lira from the dollar that you have. Would that transaction, because there is a speculation in it, is that haram?
What you're doing is you're saying is that you want to take a position in Turkish lira.
Yes.
Because you think that the Turkish lira is going to go up in value.
Yes.
Vis-a-vis the US dollar.
Yes. So
so
exactly.
you want to hold Turkish. You want to hold Turkish lira. Well, there's certain rules around holding money. Okay, so it's like rules around zakat, for example. There's also
I
rules.
understand that, but see, I'm trying to figure out the issue of the speculation here.
Okay, well, the question is that what you would be doing is you would be saving. Okay, so let's say you're saving to buy a car, or let's say you're saving to buy a house. All right?
Hold on, so you're not calling it speculation here; you're calling it saving here.
Yeah, I'm talking about saving because
if I'm
going to buy, be sitting on cash, right?
No, so if I'm going to wait and see that I know that this thing's going to drop and I'm going to make money on the Turkish lira, is that haram? Although it's speculation, is that haram?
You can hold a currency if it's halal for you to hold the currency. Okay, so this is why I use the word saving. So, are you saving validly versus are you speculating, investing? This is a valid question mark. All right. But again, yes, you can hold Turkish lira, you can hold US dollars. But again, holding dollars or Turkish lira in any amount, any significant amount, has got another question. Is that is that hoarding? So start asking your question: is it hoarding? Are you hoarding the money?
Look, Sheikh, here's the thing. Let's say I am a businessman, and these are very valid questions. I mean, I have, I'm always involved in these things. So let's say if you are building and you're buying a building, let's say, and then you know that I have this building cost right now is, I don't know, $20, and I know that Turkish lira is going to fall, and it's going to give me more of the building.
Okay.
And if I keep doing that, is that wrong as me as a businessman, or is that hoarding?
No. Okay, let's turn it around, because let's say you live in Turkey.
Yeah.
Okay, because this is actually happens
it's a mess.
every day.
Turkey, I understand. That's the mess. But I don't live in Turkey.
So you're living in Turkey, and you're a businessman. All right. So you've got.
I don't want to be a businessman living in Turkey.
Yeah. So you have to trade in Turkish lira, because that's the official currency, right? Right. So now you've got a profit this month. But if that Turkish lira sits in your bank account for a month, and you lose 5% of the value of that, well, that's not good. So what people will do is they'll buy dollars with that Turkish lira. That's right. So they buy dollars. Yeah, or they'll buy gold, or they'll buy silver, and that's acceptable. Yes, you can do that. So that's acceptable. But of course, you have to be thinking about this question about, okay, so over the longer term, are you saving? Are you hoarding? This is another question you've got to get into. That was the point I was making. But yes, you want to know: do you hold dollars, or do you hold gold or silver? Fair enough. That's fine. Yeah.
Fine. As I said, this has to go into part 2, because I have to take take questions here, and this would be very interesting to actually even discuss commodities and the role of commodities in this. By the way, would cryptocurrency be considered commodity? Or because
no, it's not a commodity.
Because it has no.
It's a peer-to-peer electronic cash, which is not run by any government.
Fine,
which is not an official government currency.
Okay, you just don't want us to make any money. That's what it is.
Satoshi,
so you're not giving us a position. Okay, fine. Let's go to the questions, because I'm sure a lot of people.
I don't want you to lose. I don't want you to lose a lot of money.
That's true. That is true. From 17 to 21 to, from 60,000 to what is it now? 17,000. It's unbelievable. No, 21,000. That's nuts. I understand that. But although the questions regarding currency.
No, actually, look. I did a bit of research. I did a bit of research on this. I watched a Netflix documentary. Okay, there's a Netflix documentary about this company in Canada. All right, so north of the border there, this guy. He set up a company to be an exchange for people's bitcoins. You send your dollars, Canadian or US dollars, to him and his company, and he buys bitcoins for you. And those bitcoins are held on his computer system. Now, this guy was doing this, and he got $200 million worth of money come in. And not much went out, but when people wanted to get their money out, all of a sudden they weren't getting it. And then the guy disappeared. And then all of a sudden he supposedly died. So people are saying, did he die or not? So the question, there's $160 million worth of money that people have lost. That's real dollars that went to this company to hold bitcoins. So it was a scam. It's like a Ponzi scheme. Now, so because Bitcoin is not regulated, is the Canadian government, controlling those types of companies? Is the US government going to control those types of companies? The answer is no, they're not going to do that. But they do have certain control over you if you wanted to do that in the US, because you would be then what they call a bank. and banks are very heavily regulated. I don't think they're regulated enough. You look at a lot of criminal activity in banks, but still there is, they can't run Ponzi schemes like this. And that was an interesting documentary on Netflix. It's well worth watching, because I think this is what a lot of people are being ripped off.
Let's. I mean, there's a lot around it, and as I said, we're going to have part 2, especially on the commodity issues. But then the currency exchange or currency trading. I really would like to know the details in Islamic law regarding currency trading, because it's a big mess going on in Turkey, and it's a big mess going on everywhere. Because as long as you hold dollar, it's so easy for you to become very rich in these countries, and obviously it's hurting the local businessmen. But on the other side, a person is looking to make money, and I understand the issue of hoarding and speculation. But we need to discuss that from Islamic perspective. Let's take question 1. Sheikh, the first question, although I think you did answer this, but let's ask it again. What gives money its value?
Well, you've got the notion of what I call an intrinsic value, which meant that it had some utility. So, for example, if you look at gold has got a desirability in terms of jewelry, and it also has some industrial applications. The same with silver. Silver is used in solar panels. Silver is used in conducting. Probably every smartphone out there has got a certain amount of silver in it. It's used in car batteries. So there's a very heavy usage. So that's an example of the
value of money
which is given. Yeah.
Okay. Last question, inshallah. This is from Muhammad Asghar al-Sharif. How would the Islamic State, first of all, Sheikh Asghar, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, inshallah you're doing well. This is our Imam here. How would the Islamic State implement currency on the gold and silver basis the first day after established? And would the Islamic State conduct transactions with other powers for trading?
Yes, it's a good question, and there's various ways in which it would function. Let me give you an example, okay? Because this is for the adoption of the Khalif. Obviously, on the first day, the Khalif is going to be receiving the bay'ah for the establishment of the Khilafah state, and from day one, the money of the state is going to be gold and silver. Okay, so let's say, for example, we're talking about Turkey. So let's just say, for example, if the Khilafah state came in Turkey, and let's say, for example, tomorrow was the day in which the Khilafah is declared, and the authority is presented to Muslims, and they're going to implement Shara from day one. So money will be gold and silver, and the official money of the state will be gold and silver. However, the Khalifa could say that in 3 months' time or in 6 months' time, we're going to convert all Turkish lira into dirhams and dinars, and we're going to convert them at an exchange rate of X and Y. And I think that would be a very smart move, because what that would be saying is that the official currency of the state is gold and silver, and you can use gold coins and silver coins and all of this stuff, and that's official stuff. But they would be saying that the existing currency, the Turkish lira, can continue for some element of stability. And this is what has happened previously, for example, when the euro came in. Across Europe, the Germans and the French and several other countries, they said, right, we've got, I think in January 2000 was their conversion date, and they had official conversion rates so that you could cash in all your Deutschmarks to get euros. And they did that, and they gave people a few months maybe a year, 6 months, I don't know what the time was, in which they would be using the existing currency, and then on conversion date, from that date forward, it was the new currency. So from day one, gold and silver will be the official currency of the state. If you take a gold coin into a shop or something, it's going to be valid as it is, and with silver coinage and all of that type of stuff. You could go to a merchant with these things and they weigh it and check things and all that. So that happens from day one. But the government could say that we will have an official conversion of the existing currency, because again, you've got to bear in mind people need to have confidence. If you just say to them, oh, Turkish lira, no, it's a fiat money, and it's no good. It's got no value in the state anymore. We're not backing it. We're not going to, enable you to use it. You would have pandemonium. People would go crazy. What are they going to, use for food? So people have an existing currency. So you say, well, it will continue to be used for a period of time. But you put an official conversion rate, which means that it's convertible. So people can take their Turkish lira, and the government is going to be converting it to dirhams and dinars, the gold and silver, at certain conversion rates.
All right, that is, and also we need to go a little bit more detailed in that too. But let's go to question 3, because I want to take the questions. All right, from Abdul Rahman, the question is, would like to see part 2 on how digital currency would change things. Crypto likely won't gain mass adoption, but many countries are actively researching how to implement digital currency.
Yeah, I agree. Digital currency is where it's at, and this is where it's moving. And as I say, it is even more dangerous than the cryptocurrency space, because the element of control is off the charts. It's off the scale. The ability and
look, here's the thing.
I mean,
when you're saying that, look, you're controlled. But when you have a transaction, even if I have cash, so if I give cash, let's say I go and stay in some hotel somewhere in the world, I do have to still sign some paperwork that kind of tells them who I am and what I paid them. So still somebody does know where I am.
That's correct, yes. But this is every single transaction, every single cent, every dollar, and the ability to stop you spending those dollars. Let's say that they don't like your political views. Let's say they don't like your political views. And let's say that they call you an extremist. I mean, astaghfirullah, and they call you an extremist. And we've had this issue before. This guy's an extremist, and and he's on our list, and we're watching out for him, and they can control exactly what you spend and where you go. And who's there to stop them? What's there to stop them? Nothing's to stop them.
Fine. So we need to have a discussion. That's something, inshallah, noted, Brother Abdul Rahman. We are going to have the discussion. I think it's a very unique discussion. We're going to have the consequences and how it is already turning that way. Question number 3. There's 2 more questions that we need to take. Brother Abdul, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, by the way, Sheikhi. Are there taxes in Islam?
Yes. We have kharaj and ushur tax, which is on the land, on the productive capacity of the agricultural land. So the Khalif will, in consultation with the tax collectors, that they will go to all of the agricultural land every year and do an assessment on that. That's a form of tax.
Okay, there's
the jizya. The jizya is a head tax on the non-Muslim citizens of the Khilafah state. So that is going to be a tax on everyone as well. Some people call zakat a tax. I don't call it a tax. I say it's an act of worship for the Muslims. But some people compare it to like a wealth tax. So if you have X amount of wealth, which is unused over the year, then you're going to pay 2.5% of zakat on that. So these are all elements which are well known.
No, but I guess the question, if I'm understanding the question, I think it's also they're asking, I mean, tax in the way that we see, that the way we are being taxed. Tax on our wealth, tax on our on our buying, everything that we buy, including a water bottle here in Chicago, has I don't know how many different types of taxes. Although, you know, so is that what we're talking about here, or are you saying no, we're talking about on a certain amount of wealth or certain lands only?
Well, okay, in the US and the UK, I'm based here in the United Kingdom, and we've got income tax. We've got sales tax.
Yes.
You've got business taxes.
Yes.
We've got fuel taxes.
Yes.
You've got dozens and dozens. We've got taxes on getting on an airplane. You're going to be taxed. You've got taxes for getting off an airplane. You name it. You're being taxed wherever we look. And the answer is, in Islam, we don't have those taxes. We don't have income tax. We don't have business tax. We don't have consumption tax, you know, like the sales tax. In this country, they're called VAT, value-added tax. It's not value-added; it's value-less. They're hitting us 20%, you know, on this stuff. Fuel taxes. All of this is a scam. It's really a scam, and it's horrendous. So we don't have all of that in Islam. And not only that, but we've got key resources which are public properties. The oil and gas and minerals and all these things. And this is an incredible source of wealth for the Khilafah state. And at the moment, they're in the hands of oil companies, in the hands of exploration companies. Capitalist companies have taken control of the electricity grid, the gas supply. This is why we've got, you know, severe energy crisis at the moment. Is because these profiteering. That's wealth, which is the wealth of the Ummah, and the state has to manage on behalf of the people. So that is a big form of tax we have in the West. You know, we might be having that tax in the state.
Yeah, so that I think that has to be, well, you defined it well. So you're talking about, these are two different issues here. When we talk about kharaj lands, or when we talk about you know, jizya or even zakat, those are different types of. This is not the same type of what we are seeing in regular days, where we are being taxed to death, you know, where our value already with inflation, and then now recession is already, you know, in every possible way, we are actually losing our money that we work so hard for. Let's take, there is another question here, because let's take the question first. Go ahead. From Kwame Madan. Sheikh, salam alaikum again. Hopefully you're doing well in New York. What makes Islamic model of economics different than communist and the capitalist models? Wow, that's a session by itself.
Yeah. Okay.
Kwame, man.
Look, there's a very good book called The Economic System. And you may have heard of this book. But read that book. And there's actually the first few chapters. There's a refutation of capitalism and a refutation of communism. And then the next chapter is explaining Islam. So that is a very, you know, the beginning of that book is an excellent analysis on capitalism and communism and Islam. And also Professor Muhammad Malkawi's book, you know, in terms of you know, capitalism.
Yeah,
that's right. So it's well worth reading that book as well. But if you get the book, The Economic System in Islam, and you just look at the first 3 chapters, it's basically an analysis and a refutation of capitalism and
Brother Jamal, let me ask you this. This brings an interesting question. As from, let's say, a capitalist or a communist on the left, completely on the left, a communist, would they prefer a cryptocurrency type of thing, or would they say, well, no, because they can't regulate it also? Or what would be their position on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, because again, if you go back to original thinkers, you know, the likes of Marx and Lenin, and Trotsky and others. This is way before the time that you had any electronic currencies or anything like this. But you had a very centralized command economy, which meant that they controlled the money, and they did control the money. So I would expect them to be in favor of a digital currency, and socialist governments across Europe are in favor of digital currencies because they can tax people. These are tax and spend governments. They tax high and they spend high. This is what they do. This is what the socialists do. And again, your Democrats and your Republicans are also tax and spend governments. They have all these election promises, and they promise, the earth, moon, and stars to everyone, and then they've got to pay for it. Or
you're still waiting
print
for
more
our
money.
back alley to be fixed, by the way. That was election. But let me ask you a
Really?
final question before you go here, because I know you're this time issue. Sheikh, if someone might ask the question that, okay, if you're not taking taxes, let's say we're not, there's no income tax, there's no sales tax, there's no this tax, that tax, breeding tax, I don't know what else tax they're going to come up with, but then how does the government fix the roads, and how does it fix the how do you pay your government employees? And obviously you're going to have, you need those kind of things, because it's a very common question we always get when we discuss taxes.
Well, when you look at these forms of tax in Islam, like the kharaj, the ushur, the jizya, and then the revenues from the oil, the gas, the minerals, and the public properties, and all of these things, that's a lot. That is a lot. It's not the question that this is trivial amounts of money. This is incredible amounts of money. So this is important. And then you've got things like zakat, and then this covers some of the big expenditure, like military expenditure comes into areas like zakat. So you've got to look at all the different sections of your revenue and expense categories, and then you can see that there is a lot. And of course, the point is that with oil, gas, minerals, all of these reserves, and so on and so forth, electricity, this is your main utilities. This is under the management of the state, and it's management of the state on behalf of the people. So they can charge for these things, and those things will ensure that the infrastructure is there and it's being properly maintained.
Okay, so they'll be charged, but they won't be taxed.
They won't be taxed, no.
So
but
today
but
we're
you're
being
charged
taxed and charged.
That's right. You're being charged and you're being taxed. When you buy petrol at the pump, or gas, as you call it, at the pump, and you're going to get the tax on that as well. We pay about 50% of what we pay at the pump in terms of gas is tax. It's incredible what they tax us.
Yes, believe me, we're seeing that. With this, inshallah, Jazakallah khair. As I promised you, there will be part 2 of it, inshallah, and I would like to know your fatwa on this. Exactly what it is. Not that was a speculation. We don't allow that. So inshallah, we need to, inshallah.
I'll send you this paper. I'll just
send me that paper, and I'm gonna have to, we'll have to discuss it with Dr. Malkawi too, because we really missed him today. That would have been a very nice discussion regarding speculation and others. But Allah ya akhi, jazakallah khair for your time. And for your efforts, and these are kind of conversations that need to really happen amongst the Muslims. Not only does this raise awareness, but this also raises the intellectual level of the Muslims above and beyond making wudu and learning about salah. And so, not that those things are not important, those are fundamentals of our religion, but also to teach the Muslims that there is so much more that we need to learn, and we need to understand the realities of the world that we live in today. Jazakallah khair, Shaykhi. Inshallah, we will let you know the next time that we will have these conversations on economics. And brothers and sisters out there who are watching, one of the things that you should know is throughout the Islamic world and throughout Islamic history, economics was a subject that was really the field of really intellectuals, and you find that some of the best thinkers that the Muslims produced were also economists. You have Muhammad Yusuf, for instance, one of the greatest students of Abu Hanifa himself, rahmatullah alayh, and books like Ahkam al-Sultaniyya, books like Economic System in Islam, Sheikh Taqiyuddin Ibhani, rahmatullah alayh. So many thinkers that when you think of that produced such amazing books on economics, they were some of the best thinkers that the Islamic world of the Muslims produced. And in general, the economic sciences was taken up by some of the smartest minds in the Muslim world and in the Islamic history. So inshallah, I encourage you to study Islam, study economic system of Islam, study the details of the things that we spoke about, whether it's kharaj, zakah, whether it's jizya, whether it's the taxes that are allowed, the taxes that are not allowed. How does Islam actually solve the problem of poverty? How does Islam take care of the needs of the people without taxing them, like the taxes that we see today, that we are day and night we are being taxed on? So it's very important that we study, especially with what is taking place in the whole world, whether it's inflation, deflation, recession. All kinds of terms are being used in order to take everything that we work so hard for. So it's time that we study our own deen and present the deen to the world. Inshallah, until next time, Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
قد أنابا وإلى الله استجابا إن من يرجو الثواب لا يبالي بالصعاب في سبيل الله نمضي نبتغي رفع اللواء فليعد للدين مجد وليعد للدين عز منا الدماء يا شبابا قد أنابا وإلى الله استجابا